I never thought a simple family dinner could spiral into something so ugly. But that night, everything came crashing down, and it started with one careless question. My cousin leaned back in his chair, smirking, and asked, "So, when are you finally going to pay back the money you owe?" The fork froze in my hand. The laughter around the table died instantly. My mother's face went pale, my father stiffened, and I could feel every pair of eyes lock onto me. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor and vanish before the conversation went any further. But of course it did, because in my family, secrets never stay secrets for long, and my cousin had just thrown a grenade into the middle of dinner. "What money?" my uncle asked sharply, narrowing his eyes. "What's he talking about?" His tone was suspicious, accusatory, and I felt the blood drain from my face. I opened my mouth to answer, but my cousin beat me to it, grinning like he'd been waiting for this moment. "Oh, you didn't know? She borrowed 10 grand from Grandpa before he passed, swore she'd pay it back, but guess who's been avoiding the topic ever since?" Gasps rippled through the table. My aunt actually dropped her spoon, and it clattered against her plate. My father's jaw tightened, and my mother reached for my hand under the table, her grip trembling. I felt exposed, humiliated, like my cousin had just stripped me bare in front of everyone. And the worst part, he wasn't entirely wrong. "It wasn't like that," I blurted out, my voice cracking under the weight of so many accusing stares. "I didn't just take the money for myself. I had no choice. Grandpa offered, and it was supposed to be temporary." My cousin rolled his eyes. "Temporary? It's been 3 years." My uncle leaned forward, his voice sharp and cold. "You stole from your grandfather, and then he died before you made it right." Tears strung my eyes, but I refused to look away. "I didn't steal. I was drowning, and Grandpa wanted to help. He told me not to worry about it. He wanted me to be okay." But even as I said it, I knew how it sounded. And judging by the disgusted looks around the table, so did everyone else. The silence was suffocating until my aunt spoke, her voice shaking with fury. "Do you realize what that money could have done for this family? He worked his whole life for us, and you," she jabbed her finger at me, "you took advantage of him." Her words hit me like a slap. My chest tightened, my throat burning with 1,000 things I wanted to say but couldn't get out fast enough. I wanted to remind her that Grandpa had bailout her son out of jail twice, that he had paid for her house repairs, that he had always been generous when someone was in trouble, but none of that mattered now because I was the one under the microscope. "I didn't take advantage," I said weakly. "He offered. He said he trusted me. I loved him." My voice cracked, and the tears I'd been holding back finally slipped free. But no one reached for me, no one comforted me. They just stared, as if they were all seeing me for the first time. Then my brother spoke, his voice calm but sharp, like a knife sliding between ribs. "You didn't just owe him money, you owed him the truth, and you kept it from all of us." I spun toward him, my heart pounding. "I didn't keep it from you, I couldn't bring myself to say it. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I saved up, I could pay it back before anyone ever had to know." My brother's eyes narrowed. "But you didn't, and now he's gone. You had 3 years, and instead of fixing it, you let it fester. Now you're standing here, crying like you're the victim." His words cut deeper than any of the others, because coming from him, from the one person I thought might understand, they didn't just sting, they broke me. The table erupted again, my aunt shouting that Grandpa would be ashamed of me, my cousin laughing under his breath, clearly thrilled at the chaos he had caused, my uncle muttering that I should be cut out of any inheritance, if there's even anything left after her little stunt. And me, I sat there trembling, the tears blurring my vision, my hands clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. My mother tried to defend me, saying Grandpa had always made his own choices, that he'd loved me no matter what. But her voice was drowned out by the storm. Finally, I snapped. My chair screeched against the floor as I stood, my voice trembling but loud enough to cut through the noise. "You think I don't know I failed him? You think I don't wake up every single day hating myself for not paying him back sooner? I carry that guilt every second of my life." For the first time that night, the room went silent. But the silence wasn't forgiveness, It was judgment, heavier than ever. I stood there trembling, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. My hands shook as I wiped the tears from my cheeks, but my voice, though shaky, didn't falter. "You all think you know the full story," I said, scanning the faces around the table, "but you don't. You never asked. You just assumed." My cousin scoffed, swirling the wine in his glass like he was watching a play instead of tearing apart my life. "Then enlighten us," he said with a mocking smile. "We're all dying to hear." His words were gasoline on a fire I'd been trying to control. "Fine," I snapped. "I'll tell you, but don't you dare pretend you care when all you want is gossip." The whole room tensed. Even my father, who had stayed silent so far, leaned forward slightly. It was the first time all night that I felt them waiting, not to accuse me, but to listen. I took a deep breath, my eyes fixed on the tablecloth instead of their faces. "When I borrowed that money from Grandpa, it wasn't for me, it was for Mom." My voice cracked as the words spilled out. "She was sick. The hospital bills were piling up. Insurance wouldn't cover half of it. Grandpa offered, and I begged him not to tell anyone because Mom was ashamed. That's why I kept quiet." The words hit the table like thunder. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "You told them," she whispered, her eyes wide with shock and guilt. I nodded, feeling the weight lift off my chest, but crush me in another way entirely. I was going to pay it back, every cent, but then the treatments got worse, and I just couldn't. A stunned hush settled over the room. For the first time that night, my cousin wasn't smirking. "You're lying," my aunt said sharply, but her voice lacked the venom it had before. That's not true, is it?" She turned to my mother, her face a mix of confusion and disbelief. My mother's eyes filled with tears as she nodded slowly. "It's true," she whispered. "I didn't want anyone to know. I was so embarrassed. I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. She saved me." The room shifted. My uncle leaned back in his chair, his frown softening. My brother's expression flickered, anger giving way to something else, maybe regret. Only my cousin looked uncomfortable now, like the ground had shifted under his feet. But even with the truth out, the damage was done. My grandfather was gone, and the money was still unpaid. I had saved my mother, but at the cost of my family's trust. For a moment, I thought maybe the truth would settle things, that they would finally understand why I had kept the secret, why I had carried the guilt alone for so long. But instead, the room fractured in a new way. My aunt slammed her palm on the table. "So what? You think that excuses you hiding $10,000 from the rest of us? You think Grandpa wouldn't have wanted to help us too?" Her voice was shrill, cutting, and I saw my mother flinch as if the words were physical blows. I shook my head desperately. It wasn't about fairness. It was about survival. She was in pain. She couldn't breathe. I thought I was going to lose her. My voice cracked, and I felt myself slipping back into that memory. Nights spent packing hospital halls, bills piling up like mountains, the helplessness of watching my mother fade. But my cousin leaned forward with a bitter laugh. "Touching, really, but it doesn't change the fact that you lied to all of us." The weight of his words hung in the air, and I realized then that nothing I said would erase the betrayal they felt. Yes, I had kept the secret for my mother's dignity, but to them, it was still a lie. My father finally spoke, his voice heavy, deep, and worn. "You should have come to me, to us. We could have found a way together." His eyes burned into me, not with anger, but with disappointment, and somehow that hurt the most. I swallowed hard. I didn't want to burden anyone else. I thought, if I carried it alone, at least no one else would suffer. My brother shook his head slowly. "But you did burden us, just not in the way you think." His words were like a quiet knife, not shouted, not angry, just painfully true. And that was when I realized my choice, made in love, had grown into a shadow that had touched everyone in that room. The tension didn't ease. Instead, it shifted into something colder, heavier. No one shouted now. No one slammed their fists on the table. Instead, they looked at me like I was a stranger who had invaded their family. I wanted to scream, to demand forgiveness, to ask why they couldn't see the sacrifice instead of just the secret. But the words stuck in my throat. All I could do was sit there, trembling as their silence suffocated me. Finally, my cousin leaned back, smirk returning to his lips. "Well," he said casually, as if nothing had just exploded, "at least now everyone knows the truth." I glared at him, hatred burning in my chest. He hadn't revealed this out of justice or concern. He had done it for satisfaction, to see me unravel, and he had succeeded. That night, one family dinner became the moment my entire world shifted, and I had no idea if we'd ever recover. After dinner, the house felt like a battlefield after the war. Plates sat half-eaten, wine glasses tipped, and the air was thick with everything left unsaid. People began to leave in silence, each glance at me loaded with judgment I couldn't shake off. I stayed behind, too drained to move, staring at the empty chair where Grandpa once sat at family gatherings. My chest ached with the weight of his absence, and now, with the knowledge that the last gift he gave me had become the wedge tearing us apart. My brother approached quietly, his expression softer than it had been at the table. He sat across from me, folding his hands. "You should have trusted me," he said simply. "I would have helped." His words broke me all over again. "I thought I was protecting everyone," I whispered. "Instead, I just destroyed everything." Later, I overheard voices from the kitchen, my aunt and cousin, whispering in sharp tones. "She doesn't deserve a cent of the estate," my aunt hissed. "Not after this. She tricked him, manipulated him." My cousin chuckled darkly. "I told you, I've seen her for what she is. Took long enough for the rest of you to catch up." My fists clenched. I wanted to storm in, to scream that they had no idea what Grandpa truly felt, that his last words to me had been filled with love, not resentment. But I stayed frozen in the hall, their words slicing into me like daggers. Because maybe they were right. Maybe in their eyes, nothing I said or did from this point on would ever undo the damage. When I finally went to my childhood bedroom that night, I collapsed onto the bed, still wearing the clothes from dinner. My phone buzzed with messages from relatives, some demanding explanations, others offering half-hearted words of support. I couldn't bring myself to answer any of them. I stared at the ceiling, tears streaming into my hair, and thought of Grandpa's smile. The way he had held my hand in the hospital waiting room, his voice steady when he promised, "Don't worry, I'll help you, that's what family is for." But now my family didn't see it as kindness. They saw it as betrayal, and maybe, deep down, I couldn't even blame them. That night I realized the truth. Secrets don't just disappear. They sit in the dark, waiting for the right moment to tear everything apart, and my moment had come. The following days were worse than the dinner itself. Relatives called non-stop, some demanding I return the money immediately, others accusing me of disrespecting Grandpa's memory. The story spread through the family like wildfire, twisted with every retelling until I was painted as a selfish thief. I tried to explain, to remind them why I had done it, but no one wanted to listen. My words felt like whispers against a storm. Even my closest cousin, one who I thought understood me, texted, "I don't know who you are anymore." It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about trust, and once it was gone, it seemed impossible to get back. One evening, I sat with my mom in the quiet of her living room. She looked frail, worn down by both her illness and the fallout of my secret. Her eyes glistened as she reached for my hand. "You did what you thought was right," she whispered. "You saved me, and I'll never forget that." Her words should have comforted me, but instead, they hollowed me out further. Because no matter how much she understood, the rest of the family never would. They didn't see her struggle, her fear. They only saw the missing money and my silence. And deep down, a small voice whispered that maybe they were right to judge me. At Grandpa's grave a week later, I finally broke. Kneeling in the damp grass, I pressed my forehead against the cool stone and sobbed. "I'm sorry," I whispered over and over. "I tried to do the right thing. I thought I was protecting her, but I destroyed everything else." The cemetery was empty, the air heavy with silence. I half expected him to somehow answer, to give me that steady reassurance I had relied on for so long. But there was nothing, just the sound of my own heart breaking. For the first time, I wondered if forgiveness was impossible, even from myself. When the will was read, the tension was unbearable. Every eye in the room flicked toward me, waiting to see if I'd be cut out, if Grandpa had somehow left a final message that condemned me. But instead, his letter was simple. Family is not measured in dollars. It's measured in love. Take care of each other. It should have united us, but instead my aunt scoffed and muttered, easy for him to say, he didn't know what she did. My cousins smirked in agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably, torn between Grandpa's words and their own resentment. Even in death, his love couldn't heal the fracture. Now, months later, the family is still divided. Some talk to me cautiously, while others refuse to answer my calls. Holidays are fractured, birthdays awkward. I've lost more than money. I've lost the family I thought was unbreakable. And yet part of me doesn't regret it, because I know why I did it. I know what it meant. My mother is still here, still breathing, still alive, and no amount of judgment can erase that. But I also know that from this point on, there's no going back to how things were. My cousin got what he wanted, the truth exposed, my life in pieces. And the lesson I carry with me every single day. Secrets don't just haunt you, they destroy you when the people you love most decide to use them as weapons.